The NBA is normally supposed to bring people together and bring them joy and happiness, but every once in a while, either for good or bad, it'll bring a tear to your eye. Professional athletes are mentally tough though because they have to be, but every once in a while, every so often, we see them face things that are even a little too much for them, whether it's good or bad. Moments where every fan at home could feel their emotions that night through the TV screen, and moments that make you feel a little different than the joy and happiness that you're used to. So we're looking at the 8 most emotional moments in the NBA. The day Kobe Bryant passed, the NBA stood still. I've tried to narrow all these moments down to just one specific game, but for this one I can't, because on January 26, 2020, there were 8 games that were all just as emotional. Every team that played that day had at least one player that knew Kobe on a very personal level and had connections with him in some way. It's hard to imagine how most of those guys even played that day, but not everyone did. Kyrie Irving, who looked up to Kobe like a mentor, had to leave the Nets arena as soon as he found the news. For the ones that played though, it was a strange day. There was a lot of weird feeling in every arena, and every game started out with an 8 or 24-second violation in his honor. Players wrote messages on their shoes, analysts couldn't keep it together during their job, and all throughout the day we saw players breaking down and crying mid-game. A side we've never really seen from them before. It was a day of basketball unlike any other for all the wrong reasons. Even the Lakers' next game got postponed until they were all able to come together and play, and when they were, they had a tribute for Bryant. It was even more emotional than the games on the day of. LeBron gave a nice speech, and it was a night most will never forget. In 2014, John Wall made close friends with a 6-year-old named Maya Nelson. He heard about her story and the fact that she had been fighting cancer for 5 months. Well, he befriended her, invited her family out to a Wizards game, and they stayed in touch ever since. He helped meet her favorite rapper Nicki Minaj, he wrote her name on his shoes all season, and they FaceTimed weekly. They became really close, but on December 8th, 2014, she lost her battle with cancer. In response, John Wall cried all day long, but when it came game time, he had the best game of his life, putting up 26 points and 17 assists. It's a sight to see when a player has a great game, but it's even better when you know the story behind it. When you know that they're going through something off the court and they're still able to exceed expectations. I think players are able to have such great games like that when something tragic happens because they realize how little basketball actually matters in those times, and they stop overthinking the game, and at that point it just comes easy. But what made this night one of the most emotional ever was after the game during the interview when he was asked about her, and he broke down and had to leave because he just couldn't talk any longer. It really puts things into perspective of just how much he was going through that night and how much pain he was actually in. Now we all know Derrick Rose's very publicized journey throughout his career. There was success, there was downfalls, and a lot of struggles. He was on top of the world when things came crashing down again and again and again, till he basically hit rock bottom. And he was there for a long time, until he started to make a comeback on the Minnesota Timberwolves. And it was there where his special game took place. Derrick was stepping up for his first start of the year on a Timberwolves team that had his former Bulls teammates in Coach Tom Thibodeau, Jimmy Butler, and Taj Gibson. Besides that though, there was nothing too special about this night, but Derrick made it special. It was the first time we ever got to see him return to his old self. He was hitting threes in people's faces, step backs, and dominating Rudy Gobert down low. There was nothing that could stop him. In the final minutes of the game, he hit the go-ahead shot, 2 free throws to ice the game, and who else but him to have gotten the game-saving block. So Derrick ended the night with a career-high 50 points. In the second it ended, all of his teammates swarmed him and gave him a huge hug. We've seen players get 50 before, but not just anybody gets embraced like this. This was a night where everyone on the team and everyone in the building had respect for him. Everyone knew what he had gone through and why this game meant so much. It was a sign he was coming back and a sign of great things to come for the upcoming season. He came out of the huddle crying, and the interview afterwards didn't leave a dry eye in the building. In the 2017 playoffs, the day before the Isaiah Thomas-led Boston Celtics were set to play the Chicago Bulls, it was found out that his younger sister tragically passed away. Well, from that moment on, we saw magic. The entire thing was filled with so many emotions. From seeing him before the game crying and being talked to by Avery Bradley, from hearing him get choked up in post-game interviews after putting on all-time performances, but none were more special than Game 2 of the second round against the Wizards. See, up until that point, IT was already dominating. He was on a level that couldn't be stopped. He helped his team beat the Bulls in round 1, but in that Game 2, it was what would have been his sister's birthday. So with nothing else on his mind that day except her, he went out and scored 53 points and won the game. The Wizards threw everything they had at him, and I don't care who would have been in front of him on that night. With the way he was playing, no one on the planet would have been able to stop him. He's had a lot of great games, but this was easily his best ever. It was like his sister was there with him on the court that night, and his post-game interview afterwards topped that night off perfectly. Then we have Brandon Roy in Game 4 of the 2011 NBA playoffs against the Mavs. And by this point, Brandon wasn't the up-and-coming NBA superstar waiting to happen. He wasn't the NBA All-Star and one of the best shooting guards in the league anymore. He was a man beaten and broken down due to a countless amount of knee injuries, and he was nothing compared to what he used to be. As a matter of fact, in that first round series, he only averaged 9 points a game and came off the bench. But Game 4 in that series was really something special. The Blazers came out and missed their first 15 shots of the second half, and were down by 23 towards the end of the third. But that's when something happened for Brandon Roy. He hit 2 shots to end the third, then went on to either score or assist on nearly every single play of the fourth quarter. He single-handedly outscored the entire Mavs team 18-15, brought the Blazers back, hit a 4-point play to take the lead, then a final shot to secure it, and after the game he couldn't help but start crying. And this was very similar to Derrick Rose's 50. To see a man who had been broken down so much, but to have one more game where the old him made an appearance. And this was one of Brandon's last ever games for the Portland Trailblazers. Michael Jordan had a deep bond with his father. James Jordan would be at the Bulls practice facility almost daily, and some players even had a better friendship with him than they did Michael. James always supported MJ and helped him become the GOAT, so his passing destroyed him. It's why he retired in 1993 and why he went on and played baseball. Jordan said the last conversation they ever had was about if he should retire and play baseball, so he did it. And it took him about 2 years to make a comeback. And when he did, he was ready for the 1995 and 96 season, where he proceeded to have the greatest season of all time, win the MVP and beat the Supersonics in Game 6 of the NBA Finals on June 16th, 1996, in what just happened to be Father's Day. Most people don't remember much from that game or a ton from that series. You don't remember what Michael Jordan wore to the arena that night, you don't remember the first basket or what the final score turned out to be. The lasting image we all remember is Michael Jordan laying on the floor crying, to go along with the post-game interview where he says he did it all for his dad and won his first championship back in honor of his father. As we know, LeBron James' Cleveland Cavaliers career is one of, if not the greatest stories in NBA history. He started his career and his life there. It's his hometown, and in his first run with them, he established himself as one of the best in the NBA, brought them great success and led them to the finals, but could never give them a championship. So he left, and when he returned in 2014, he made a promise to bring the Cavs a championship, and 2 years later in 2016, he was facing one of the best NBA teams ever assembled, the 73-9 Golden State Warriors, who quickly got up 3-1 in the finals, and it was looking like it was over for Cleveland. But then LeBron took things to a level we've never seen before, and in the last 3 games he put up 41 points twice, and then a 27-point triple-double in Game 7. Himself and Kyrie Irving stepped up and dominated, and all of that made that Game 7 such an emotional night. Who was going to win, the Warriors or the Cavs? Were the Warriors going to complete the best season of all time? Were the Cavs finally going to win a championship? I mean, it was Game 7, tensions were extremely high, and depending on what outcome you wanted, like me, you were extremely nervous the entire time. And that final 2 or 3 minute stretch where it went back and forth and no timeouts were called, and it looked like either team could take it, had everyone on the edge of their seats, but then ultimately, thanks to a block and a shot, Cavs won. LeBron filled this promise, left these lasting images, and gave an interview straight from the heart where he yelled, "This is for you, Cleveland." Now back in 2016, Kobe Bryant played in his final NBA game against the Utah Jazz. We know Kobe's story though, so we'll cut to the chase. Up until Kobe's last game, he was basically on a 2-year farewell tour, all leading up to this moment. And this game was unlike any other. It was emotional too. I mean, after everything, after all he had been through, we were watching this man's final moments on the court. Ticket prices that night were going for $11,000. Everyone wanted to see Kobe's last game. It was a 20-year career perfectly summed up on that one day. Now, let's ignore the fact that every single possession the ball was in his hands and he took over 50 shots that night. But let's focus on the fact that Shaq asked him to get 50 points before the game. Well, he got 60. And not only that, he by himself outscored the Utah Jazz in the fourth quarter, as well as brought them back from being down, hitting multiple clutch shots to take the lead and eventually win the game, in a fashion that couldn't have been any more fitting for Kobe Bryant in his final game. It was really symbolic of his career and one of the best last games of all time. And just like for his career, there was no better game to end this video on. Goodbye.